AITAH for not wanting to be friends with my boyfriend's brother. I, 20 SF, and my boyfriend, 20 SM, have been dating for 5 months. A month or so ago I stayed the night as his for the first time. We live 2 hours apart, and both have busy schedules usually, so we would only go on dates during the daytime. He stayed at my house if he missed the last train. I've been to his house before, and I've briefly met his parents. We both live with our parents every time. We're not particularly close, but get along. But as his younger, teen, brother doesn't live with them, I had never met him. I'm shy to the point I cry if I have to meet more than one new person at a time. If I have to, I'll just suck it up, but I'm inconsolable after. My doctor says I have almost a phobia of meeting people, and my boyfriend warned me his brother is an asshole. He insults people, is pushy, and will make it a point to have loud arguments or intercourse with his girlfriend to piss anyone in my boyfriend's room off if they've upset him or his girlfriend. So I politely asked my boyfriend if it would be okay if I met his brother another time. I would even do it the next time I was there, even if it was one of our short dates. My boyfriend agreed and told me he'd relay this to his brother, so I assumed he would. When I got to the house it was like normal. I greeted his parents and we went into my boyfriend's room. Since I hadn't heard any other people in the house, I assumed his brother and girlfriend had decided to skip the visit this time because my boyfriend wouldn't bring me out to meet them properly, but I was wrong. My boyfriend was relaxed until someone knocked incredibly fast and hard on the door. I thought it was his mother and something had happened, but I heard a different voice and realized was his brother. I just remained seated and let my boyfriend speak to him. His brother wanted to meet me, and my boyfriend turned to me and asked if they could come in and hang out with us. I was confused because he already knew my answer. So I just shook my head no, and my boyfriend relayed it with a sorry attached. However, his brother didn't give up and insisted multiple times he be allowed in to meet me, or that my boyfriend dragged me out to meet him. At one point I started crying, and it seemed that is what made my boyfriend remember how I am, so he left the room to speak with them. He returned a bit later, but for the entire weekend his brother and brother's girlfriend repeatedly insisted I meet them and go out with them, to the point I refused to leave the room unless it was to go to the bathroom, the room next to my boyfriend's, and I tried to arrange a ride home, but no one wanted to drive that far out, and my boyfriend looked hard when he saw me trying to figure out how much an Uber would cost. So I stayed. I left extremely early in the morning so I wouldn't see his brother and brother's girlfriend on the way out, but they were awake and assumed I was my boyfriend because their door was closed. They yelled out boyfriend's name, "Your girlfriend's a bitch," and laughed. I cried and went back up to the room and told my boyfriend. He looked uncomfortable and then told me he'd walk me to the bus stop. 2 days after I went home, we had a small discussion about how his brother treated me, and my boyfriend explained due to my boyfriend's toxic exes, all very horrible people who I knew before my boyfriend, and can confirm they are toxic. His brother just overly protective and doesn't understand boundaries, and the insults were just the way they were raised. They don't view calling someone a bitch as an insult when it's someone they consider family. We ended the conversation on the agreement my boyfriend would thoroughly talk for his brother about how he treated me, and that I heard him call me a bitch, and that because he and I weren't close like that it wasn't okay. I thought it was all fine and good until yesterday. Yesterday my boyfriend asked if we could talk, but I'm too busy this week to go out, so we settled for a text conversation. He told me first off that family is really important to him, and I'm his family too. But I've met his parents enough and get along with them, and now he wants me to try and pursue an actual friendship with them so I can be more involved in their family. He used the words "our family" for context as to what I say next. I agreed I'll make more of an effort, but said I don't want him to call his parents my family. They're not my family. I could tell he got a bit irritated and I apologized, but then he got mad and told me that he also wants me to be friends with his brother. I told him I was fine with meeting him properly, but after being harassed and called a bitch I didn't want to be friends with him. I didn't need to be anyway. My boyfriend insisted we needed to get along, because he wants a future with me and because of how family is important to him and how his brother apologized for the incident to him over text. I should be okay with agreeing to one day be friends with him. I got mad too and said I didn't want to ever be friends with a teenager who calls adult women bitches for not wanting to hang out with them. He got cold and didn't respond to my texts for a few hours. He apologized earlier this morning and said he'd been stressed from the pressure of his family to get me to forgive his brother because it's not a big deal to them. but my boyfriend's been thinking and asking his friends, and they've showed him how big of a deal it actually is. He didn't think it was too horrible before. I apologized for getting rude and we forgave each other. I told this to my friends, but half of them think I'm the asshole for not forgiving his brother because he's young, or that I'm too sensitive. The other half think I'm in the right but could have been nicer about it. So am I the asshole for not wanting to be friends with my boyfriend's brother? If so, if not, how can I approach and fix this situation? Edit. His brother isn't near 18, but he's older than 15. And me and my boyfriend are still in our 20s, but a fair amount older than him. I'm avoiding giving exact ages for their privacy of them, but I'll be more specific and say I'm older than 21. By being friends, my boyfriend means personal, consistent, direct contact with his brother and hanging out. Like being actual legitimate friends, the a-hole. You can be cordial, but even if it's their norm, there's no reason to let them insult you. Your BF is pressured by his family to conform to their actions, and you can't force him not to, but you can hold people accountable for their name-calling and disrespect. My advice is to remain cordial, stay kind, and even think of a closer relationship down the line. Op replied, "Thank you, the situation isn't over. I think I'm getting very ominous texts from my boyfriend, but your comment has made me feel a bit better by being validated. Update, AITAH for not wanting to be friends with my BF brother. I know not many people saw my old post, but I decided to update nonetheless. Since then a lot has happened, so here we go. He ended up going back to my boyfriend's house about a day and a bit after posting, and all was well at first. I kept his mother at arm's length, and she and I had a short talk about how I wanted more space and time to build any kind of relationship with her. At first she was insistent this was only because of my social phobia, and so I should just push through it quickly. I was firm and told her I had talked to her and interacted with her enough that my wasn't a thing I experienced with her, and I simply needed these things to pursue a more friendly and real relationship with her. Then she tried to tell me I was being cruel and asking her to change her entire personality to make myself happy, so I was selfish. My boyfriend's stepdad stepped in and told her she was wrong. I wasn't insulting her or being selfish or asking her to change who she was. They stepped into another room, and after a while she apologized to me, only for what she had said that day, and agreed to what I've asked. I thought at the time my boyfriend's brother wasn't home, since the entire time I was there no one mentioned him. He wasn't around anywhere I didn't hear from him. I found out when I left that he had been home, just stayed away from me. I assumed it was to make me comfortable, and it made me happy. And I knew I was ready to talk with him. However, I found out the next week that wasn't the case at all. He had avoided me because he was so infuriated about me setting my boundaries that he couldn't stand to see my fat face. This was said to my fat face, LOL, in person when I ran into him on my way to the bathroom. I had greeted him and asked after I used the bathroom if he would like to talk. He said no, explained why he had avoided me, and then continued to call me a variety of insults all about my weight, skin color. I'm white. My mother is white, but my father is Thai. However, I look entirely like my mother in features. I only got my dad's eye color and the fact I'm a fairly light medium to medium skin tone. Also, yes, I am fat, how I dress and things he assumed about me. I was pretty shocked and ended up not using the bathroom. I just went into my boyfriend's room, grabbed my things, and began the long journey home. I told my boyfriend what had happened when he asked where I had gone, and I profusely apologized for not telling him I was leaving. He seemed upset at his brother and said I didn't have to apologize. We ended up speaking pretty rarely over the next week and a bit. Then it all came to a head when he asked if we could speak on the phone. I agreed, and he began trying to tell me his brother was just joking, also really tired, insulted by how I talked to his mother, hungry, so he was hangry or frustrated with school. I was pretty pissed out with the excuses, but asked if this meant his brother was sorry. I said if his brother was sorry I'd accept an apology and my boyfriend could just come over to my place instead. My boyfriend was quiet before mumbling something, and then his brother yelled into the phone about how I couldn't take a joke, and again, that I was a fat bitch. I heard my boyfriend scream something I couldn't make out at his brother before I hung up. We ended up having an extremely long and emotionally charged conversation that ended up with me stating I'd no longer be entering the house if his brother was there ever, until his brother wrote me an apology letter and apologized to me in person when I said I was ready after that. And that until then, and if the apologies ended badly, the idea of me having a relationship with his brother was off the table. My boyfriend agreed, apologized to me, and relayed this to his brother, who did not take it well. We almost broke up after my boyfriend told me part of him still thought it wasn't a big deal and that his brother was joking, which I replied to by calling him a blind asshole. I'd never insulted my boyfriend or anyone before this, and that added a lot of weight to it. I instantly apologized as I knew I didn't mean it, I was just angry and upset. My boyfriend said I didn't need to be sorry and that he thought if this was something he couldn't work through quickly he'd have to leave me for my emotional safety. I told him he had been working and making progress and he had done so much to make me feel comfortable. He ended up apologizing for saying all that, including the breakup stuff. He knew it was extremely fucked up of him to undermine all of this and then threaten to leave me because of his brother. Of course, this is much less detailed than what happened, but I don't want it to get too long. His mother found out when he told her why I would only be coming over when brother wasn't home that his brother had lied to her about what had been happening. She won't tell me what he said, but she's apologized to him and kicked him out back to his girlfriend's house as of now. So I'm coming over tomorrow. We'll update again if anything interesting happens. Before we go to the next story, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. AITAH for expecting my long-term friend to treat me like a date while we're together as a couple. So, I've, 25F, been friends with this guy, 25M, for 5 to 6 years. Although we lived almost 1,300 kilometers apart, we shared a lot online, and that led us to grow pretty close over the years. He always said he had a crush on me, but since we lived so far away, he never acted on it, and we didn't take it seriously. That was until a few weeks ago when he suggested we take a vacation together. Long story short, I accepted, and one night on our vacation, one thing led to another, and we had sex. From then on, our dynamic seemed to shift from friendly to romantic, or so I thought. What bothered me was that during our trip, he often kept his phone screen away from my sight and joked that he didn't want me to see him flirting with others. Additionally, he mentioned his ex and how unforgettable she was to him several times. I felt petty, but those comments upset me. I knew we hadn't made any plans to become intimate, let alone exclusive, so I wouldn't expect him to abruptly cut everyone out. However, now that we were intimate, I wanted him to be less focused on engaging with other women while we were together. I let those small waves of jealousy pass and didn't make a big deal out of them, but what triggered a big fight was when I found out he shared sexual details about us with his female friends. I have a condition that makes intercourse so painful that I end up crying every time I have sex. I discovered this when I lost my virginity 3 years ago, but I thought maybe that much pain was normal for the first time and that it would get better with subsequent intercourse. So, I left it untreated since I wasn't sexually active anyway. This time, after painfully, yet consensually, trying multiple times, it was clear that the problem persisted. He casually informed me that he talked about my problem with his friends, and I saw a few texts from them eagerly asking for updates on how deep he could get his penis into my vagina. I was furious. We got into a fight, which was big considering our tame friendship so far. He apologized for making my business public, and I reluctantly forgave him. A few days later, the trip ended, and we both went our separate ways. Now, it seems like, unlike me, he overall enjoyed the vacation so much that he wants us not only to become exclusive boyfriend and girlfriend, but also to move in together. He has apologized and promised to set boundaries with other women. But the thing is, I feel like my trust in him is ruined for good, and I find it difficult even to be friends with him. Part of me says I'm being overly sensitive over a guy who isn't even my boyfriend, and part of me wants to validate my feelings about how I expect my date to treat me. AITAH for being upset.